everyone, and welcome to Schwab Coaching. My name is Cameron May. I'm a Senior Manager of Trading and Derivatives Education here at Schwab, and this is Getting Started with Thinkorswim. And today we're talking about charting, and specifically we're going to be going through the grid functionality on charts, how a trader might track the markets more efficiently, track their stocks more efficiently using multiple charts at the same time. Now, I don't want to just talk about the tool's capabilities, but I also want to talk through 5 example grid charts that might be helpful in tracking markets and stocks. So I think this is going to be a great discussion. Looking forward to it. Before we can get to any of that, though, let me first of all say hello to everybody who's chatting in. Great to see all the familiar names out there in YouTube. Hello to anybody that might be here for the very first time, but hello there, Greg and Wacky Whack, BB, Musician, Trader Joe, Rojo, Ted, Richard, TD, who else is here? Everybody else. Thanks for joining us week after week. We always appreciate your attendance and your contributions to these discussions. Now, if you are among those who are here for the very first time, I do want to welcome you as well. And if you're watching on the YouTube archive after the live stream is concluded, enjoy the recording. It's a great way to watch these webcasts, but you're certainly invited to join us in the live stream audience. And if you'd like to be here, this is a Wednesday webcast series. We kick things off promptly at 2 Eastern time. Now, I also want to let my live stream audience members know that my very good friend Barb Armstrong is hanging out in the chats with us. She's already keeping an eye on the questions that are coming in. If I can't get to your questions, Barb's there to help me pick up the slack there. So thanks for having my back there, Barb. Barb and I would also like to issue an invitation to everybody listening, whether live or on the archive, to follow your favorite Schwab presenters on social media. You can find Barb and me on X. You can find Barb there at Barb Armstrong CS. You can find me on X at Cameron May CS. And you can also find and follow me on LinkedIn. Just go to linkedin.com/in/Cameron May CS. But let's get into this discussion of using the grid charts function on Thinkorswim charts. If you've never seen that before, I'll do a quick demonstration of how they work, and I think you'll quickly start to see the potential value there. But as we go to those charts, of course, we need to bear in mind the risks associated with trading and investing. Bear these important disclosures right top of mind. All corporate or issuer names and market data shown are for illustrative purposes only and are not a recommendation, offer to sell, or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security. Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as a sole means of investment research. Investing involves risks, including the loss of principal, and any investment decision you make in your self-directed account is solely your responsibility. All right, so let's set an agenda for today. Simple agenda. We're going to be getting acquainted with the grid chart capabilities of Thinkorswim charts, and we're going to use that to build 5 example grids that might assist a trader or an investor in keeping an eye on new market developments and on things that are happening with the stocks that they're following. So by the time we're done today, well, first of all, what we'll do is we'll go through what grids are, how to generally navigate with that tool. Then we're going to build those 5 example grids. I'll actually even share those grids with my live audience, and I'll post it in the description as well, in the video description. But by the time we're done, you should be very comfortable with the grid tool, how it's used. You should also just be envisioning how you might tailor that tool to help assist with the management of your portfolio. Obviously, not everybody uses every tool, but here we go with the grid chart tool. So let's go right to Thinkorswim desktop. This is the paper money version of the platform. And we'll just start with the S&P 500. And this is just a single chart. And so let's direct our attention up here. And through the rest of this discussion, I want to introduce us to these 5 example grids: economic trends, index trends, sector strength, timeframes, and the Mag 7, right? But basically, a grid chart allows the trader or investor to monitor multiple charts at the same time. I've had the question before, Cameron, how do I look at multiple symbols on the same chart at the same moment? And that's done using the grids. So I'm going to come up here to grids. And how about we just choose, now you'll notice as I click on this little rectangle icon up in the upper right, that is the grid chart tool. And it gives me a number of different configurations of potential charts. We can have anywhere up to, I believe, 32 charts at the same time, up to 8 across, up to 4 down in any configuration across or down. So how about we just use 4 as a quick example here. So I'm just going to choose right here 4, arrange 2 across, 2 down. And once I click on that chart, it brings up a grid. Now, each one of the charts within this grid are known individually as cells, C-E-L-L. Kind of don't think about it like as a prison cell. Let's be positive here. Think about it like the cell in a honeycomb. All right? But in any case, each one of these are individually utilizable charts. They have all the same capabilities of a full screen chart, and actually we can go right to full screen very quickly. So let's do that. So how about we load in a few example symbols here. So for example, maybe I'll just type in GE up here, hit enter on my keyboard. I'm going to type in F for Ford down here and V for Visa because I'm lazy and I'm using short symbols. But there we go. We can see very quickly how a trader or an investor can start to load up multiple charts. And they could, yes, start to load in preferred time frames and indicators and all of that. Now, another nice capability of this grid chart tool is that we can detach it. So if we come up here and we click on the little dots and dashes icon in the upper right, we can select detach. And what this does is it opens this grid now in a separate window. And then I can reposition it. Like I'm sitting here at my desk. I actually have a central monitor, and then I have a monitor off to my right, and I have a monitor off to my left, so that I can do all sorts of things all at once and keep an eye on all sorts of things all at once. So I could grab this now individual window separate from the Thinkorswim platform and drag it over to my right monitor, or I could drag it over to my left monitor and just have now access to a number of charts that way. I'm going to close up that detached grid. But a final thing that I wanted to show you, just in the basic navigation of this grid chart tool, and then we're going to get into building these example 5 grids, is that in particular, if we're using lots of charts within a single grid, you know, if we have 4, these 4 are fairly visible, fairly usable. But if we had 8 or 16 or 32, you can imagine the display space for each one of those is going to be getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And if we want to look at each one individually, here's how we do that. Up in the upper right of each of these charts is another individual menu. I'm going to click on that menu icon, and we can maximize just that one cell. Remember, the cell refers to the individual chart within the grid. So this takes us back to the S&P 500. It seems like we lost the other 3. No, they're actually still right up here in grid form, and we can move back and forth among those by using these arrows here. So I can advance forward. One symbol will take me forward to General Electric. The next one will take me to Ford. And finally, I can go to Visa, and I can move back through that grouping like that. And if I want to just go back to the grid view, I can use this reverse icon right here. So if you're first time using grids, hopefully this is giving you a quick introduction to the tool. I think you're starting to get a sense of the flexibility and the power of the tool. But now let's build some grids. I don't want to leave it to your imagination for how this might be used to streamline things and to track markets and stocks more efficiently. Well, let's do this. We're going to build some example grids. We're just going to start from scratch. All right. The first one I want to build is going to be one that I call economic trends. So each of these 5 is going to serve a different purpose for our hypothetical trader or investor. So starting with economic trends, for some traders and some investors, they like to keep an eye on things that are just happening broadly. It may be a specific index of the stock market, but it might be other influences like what's going on with gold or interest rates or the dollar or who knows, cryptocurrencies, that sort of a thing. But let's build a grid of those. So how about let me build a grid of 6. So I'm going to go here up in the upper right. Let's choose 6. And let's start to build using the first one as our default. So I'm going to go to maximize cell. Now, what we could do, I'm going to have a couple of ways that we could have handled this. Let me just stay here for a second. I'm kind of reversing course just to show you how we can quickly load up multiple symbols here. How about let's use the S&P 500, and maybe our would-be investor is also tracking the volatility index. Maybe they're also keeping an eye on crude oil prices, and they want to see what's happening with gold, and as I mentioned, maybe the dollar. Let's put in $DXY for that dollar index. And finally, yeah, how about cryptocurrencies? Let's use the Bitcoin chart as a stand-in. Now, what you'll notice here is as we load these have some very different appearances. And it might be a little bit too much information. It might be a bit to absorb as we move from one chart to the next. So let me make a quick modification, then I'm gonna push that through the rest of this grid. So let's go back here to the S&P 500. Let's maximize this cell. Our others are still waiting for us. But one change that we might make, maybe we just want to see things not on a very granular scale, like let's say day-to-day candlestick charts, but how about we just set up a nice, clean, thick line chart that's easy to see. So I'm going to come up here to our chart style, and I'm going to change that chart type from a candle to a line. Now mine, kind of cheated, it's a little bit thicker than is typical. That's because that's a default in my chart settings. So if I go here on my chart settings and I go to appearance, the appearance of that line, you'll notice my line width is set to 5. By default, on yours, it's probably going to be like a 1. See how thin that is? And if we're looking at a series of small charts all at once, those little thin lines can start to disappear. So again, let me just apply this so that you can see the process of applying the thicker line right from the start. I'm going to go back up to our chart settings gear icon, go to appearance of the chart, and let's dial up that line width to a 5. We can keep going making this thicker if we want to, but that works for me. I'm going to click apply and click OK. And now we have a nice clean line chart. There are no other technical studies applied. And to keep that nice clean line chart with no technical studies, I want to save this style. So let's go up here to style, and I'm going to go down and click save style, and let's give this a name. Now I already have one. It's called a thick line. So if I start to click save, it's going to ask me, that already exists, Cameron. Are you sure you want to replace it? In this case, I'm going to say no, because I don't need to. But that's how you would build and save this style. And now what we can do is just move to our other charts, and we can just change the style of each one of those. So let's load up our style to a thick line and move on to the next one and load that style to a thick line. And you'll notice it's just cleaning up the lines and making it just like our trader here likes. We haven't made the other changes though. So if I were to go up here and change this to, or actually just click the revert line or the revert icon, you can still see a few that we haven't changed yet. But once we make those changes, we get these nice clean line charts. And once we're satisfied with the construction of this grid, so that we don't have to go through this process again next time, we just save that grid. So I'm going to go up here and select Save Grid. Now, the name that I've selected for this one is the economic trends, not exonomic, economic. So if I click Save, it's going to ask me again, hey, Cameron, there's already a grid layout with that name. Do you really want to write over that? No, I'm not going to here, but I'm just showing the process for how you at home might be saving your own. So we just click OK. And now that we've saved that grid, if we are off somewhere else, we're looking at some other stock, if we're on General Electric and we have this loaded up as a, let's say, just a normal candle chart, and I want to have a quick look at that grid of those different economic variables, I can just pop up here to my grid. I can choose economic trends and click OK, and there we go. There's our economic trends grid. Let's flop this one out so that we're seeing the default line charts. Now, some of these, they're going to have this. Do you see this green line? That's just our open interest. If you don't need to see that, you don't have to worry about that. Anyway, Greg says, can we apply to all cells at once rather than applying to each individually? Greg, I will be showing a technique that'll be a time saver along those lines, but not really if we want to keep the individual symbols but apply the tools at the same time. I think I can see what you're talking about there, Greg. No, but I'll show you a different time saver, if you'll forgive me. Okay, so that is our economic trends grid. How about I'm going to share that with my live audience right now. And as I share each of these grids, just remember that a shared grid is not guaranteed as to timing or accuracy. But for those that are watching on the archive after this this live stream is over and you're just watching the video, you can just go down in the video description. I'll make sure that I put it down there, and you can grab the links for these individual grids as well. Greg, you're all about those time savers? All right, let me see. Let's move on to another. It's going to be our third grid that we build that'll show you that time saver that I'm talking about there, Greg. Well, let's go back here to our S&P 500 chart. I just like to start with a nice clean slate. So let's switch our style back here. Let's go back to a traditional candle chart. And let's build a second grid. So we built one that may allow the trader or the investor to keep an eye on those broad economic influences like dollar and oil and what's happening with maybe Bitcoin or options prices using the volatility index. Well, let's take it down a layer. Let's get specific to the stock market. Maybe our trader or investor wants to keep an eye on the major market indices, but see them all at once, all at the same time. Maybe they like to have what's going on with the economy on one screen. Maybe they want to see what's going on with the individual sector, indices on another screen. Let's set up our second grid, which I'm going to call the index trends. All right. Now I'm just going to use a few of our example indices. Let's build a grid of 4. But we're going to look at these through a different lens. So let me maximize this cell of the S&P 500. Or you know what? Once again, let me go back here. I was going to load up the individual symbols separately. I don't think I'm going to do it that way. Let's just pop them in here while we have the grid displayed. So how about we're watching the S&P? Maybe we're keeping an eye on the Dow. Maybe we're also tracking the NASDAQ composite. And finally, maybe our trader's keeping an eye on the Russell as well. So there are 4 major market indices. But once again, a little bit of different presentation of each of these charts. Let's say that our trader is preferring to use maybe one of their favorite technical studies. Now, this is not a promotion of this specific technical study set that I'm going to be showing. It's just an example. But let's go back here and maximize our first chart, and let's set up a different style of chart. So I'm going to load up 2 technical studies. I'm going to go for simple moving averages. These are just trend lines, sometimes used also as price floors and price ceilings, but just describing different time frames. How about for our first trend line, let's use a 10-period trend line, and let's give it a thickness of 3 out of 5, and we're going to make that one red. Okay, that's going to be our sort of intermediate term trend line. And 10 periods, 10 days doesn't sound like a lot. We're going to move this out to weeks in just a moment. Now, at the same time, let's add a 40-period trend line. This one we're going to make a 5 out of 10 in thickness, so it's going to be a little bit thicker than our 10-period moving average. And that's for a specific purpose. I'm using red and green so we can tell the difference, but not everybody can see the difference in color between red and green. So I'm also using a difference in thickness. So let's click OK and click Apply. And what we're left with here are these 2 trend lines. One's a little bit shorter term than the other one. And for some traders, they look for the interplay of the 10 versus the 40. And when the shorter term starts to break down through the longer term, it might signify a significant shift in the trend of price levels on the S&P 500. Not everybody uses this combination of technical indicators. And as a matter of fact, most who use this sort of an approach use a different time frame altogether. It's typically used on a weekly chart. So I'm going to switch this to a weekly chart. Let's go to a 3-year weekly chart. And this automatically tailors those 2 indicators to a weekly time frame now. So for some, as an example, they might be looking for this 10-period moving average rising up and through the 40 as a sign that short-term, maybe short-term to intermediate trends are strengthening versus the longer trend, and maybe the S&P is set for a bullish run. Obviously, it's not a guarantee. But there's our example set of technical indicators. And now let's just apply those very quickly to our other charts. How do we do that? Well, we save the style, but this is important. I need to do this, I need to point this out. As we go to save our style, I'm going to call this our index trends. But I'm going to make sure that I check this box that says include patterns and study set. As a matter of fact, I intended to show that on the last one, and I forgot to check the box. That's why on 3 of my charts, some of them had a study applied that I didn't have on the first one. Remember on 3 of those charts, it showed that green line. It was actually just our open interest study. Yep, whereas the first one didn't have that. If we check this box, it's saving all of the important elements of this chart setup. It's saving the time frame, the chart style, meaning whether it's a candlestick or a line, and it's also saving any studies that we've added, like our moving averages. So let's click Save. And then as we move to our next chart, I can just pop up here to Style and load that new style. Let's go for our index trends. There we go. So let's quickly set up the other 2. And that will have us prepared to save. There we go. So as we go back to these 4, now we can see all 4 are looking at a 3-year chart. They've applied a 10 over 40 moving average crossover system. And there are no other studies, nothing else is sort of cluttering up the chart, unlike what we saw on that first grid. So now we're ready to just save this grid. So we just come up here to the grid icon and we'll save that grid. Give it a name. In this case, I would call it, these were the index trends. And then click Save. This is going to ask me, are you sure you want to do that, Cameron? No, I don't want to do that because I already have one. It wouldn't do anything other than just replace it. It's fine. It would be exactly the same. But I'm not going to do that. But I will share this grid. So that gives us 2 grids, one that might allow a trader and investor to follow a broad group of economic variables that might be, yes, having some influence on individual stock market indices. Now we're looking at those indices themselves and navigating quickly among those. So let me share that grid. Just copy a link here. I'll paste it over here in our chat. And once again, shared grids are not guaranteed as to timing or accuracy. And let's build a 3rd grid. Now we're going to go down an additional layer. So we started with broad economic trends, then we moved to individual index trends. Now we're going to look at different sectors. There are actually 11 sectors that make up the S&P 500, into which each of the component companies of the S&P 500 are assigned. So a healthcare stock is in the healthcare sector, and a technology stock is in the technology sector. So let's clean things up again. I'm going to come up here. How about we just go to our style? I actually have a style known as a clean candle. Oop, did I overwrite the clean candle? I didn't intend to, but apparently I did. That's okay. Let me just quickly change this. A 10 and a 40 shouldn't be applied to our clean candle. Let's apply that. And we're going to save that style as our clean candle. Yes, let's replace the other one. In any case, now let's load up our 11 different sectors. All right, now you were asking about a time saver here. Here's a time saver. No worries. No worries. I think we're back online. Okay. So what we're doing here is I wanted to note that in the watch list, among the public watch lists, is already a list of the 11 sectors that make up the S&P 500 sectors. So I'm going to click on the watch list heading. I'm going to go to the public watch list in alphabetical order and go to the S&P 500 sector indices. You'll notice here are those 11 sectors, and they have these kind of strange symbols. $ SP 500 pound 10. Now I could type that in here, and I could type in pound 15 here and pound 20 here, and it would load up the individual sectors. But here's your time saver. Up in the upper right, I'm going to go to load symbols to cells. I think you can already guess what that's going to do. Yep, it's going to load those up for us automatically. All I have to do is tell it which watch list we're loading into these cells. So I'm going to go to the public watch list for the S&P 500 sectors, and there we go. Automatically loaded up. So I didn't even need to go to the watch list over here. I just wanted to show that that watch list existed. And now I can tailor this. Let's maybe set up a sector strength tool set that a trader might use. Okay, so let's go back up here. Let's maximize this first cell. This is the energy sector. And let's set up, how about we just add one technical indicator? I'm going to go to Edit Studies, and I'm going to add the relative strength indicator. If you're not familiar with this, what this does, you'll see it's pretty obvious once I add this to the chart, but it's going to do a relative strength comparison from day to day, comparing the sector to the S&P 500. All right, so let's click Apply and click OK. And what we're left with here are two lines. We have the red line, which is sort of our starting point. And then the blue line is just a comparison of which has been stronger, the energy sector or the S&P 500. If our blue line is going down, during that time frame, the energy sector has been less strong or weaker than the S&P. When this blue line is going up, it means that for that time frame, the sector is outperforming the S&P. And yes, it's possible for this blue line to be going down even when our chart is going up. That's because if energy is going up, but the S&P is going up faster, it means that energy is still underperforming. It's relatively weaker. So what some technical traders and investors will do is they'll keep this indicator on their chart so they can just quickly see, are there any of those sectors that are starting to outperform recently? Especially if they're looking for, let's say, bullish indications among the, let's say, rotation of the different sectors. So let's leave this indicator on here. I'm going to save this as a new chart style. So let's save this style. And this is going to be our, what do you think I'm going to call it? Sector strength. And let's include that study, the relative strength that we just added. And we're going to click Save, and it's going to say, Cameron, are you sure it already exists? Yeah, I don't need to save it, but now you can see how it would be done. And then we can just go from one to the next and load up that style. Style, let's load that style for sector strength, and so on. And once we're done, let me just skip ahead. I'm going to load up my sector strength grid. There we are. And you can see what we're left with. Actually, did I not save my grid with my relative strength? I must not have. That's okay. At least you've seen how it's done. So what I might do, rather than sharing this one, since I'm not satisfied that I constructed it correctly to be shared, practice adding the relative strength to your own charts. How can you add that relative strength and then carry it across all the symbols in the sector? Maybe I'll share it anyway. Then you can just go and pop in the relative strength if you like. That's fine. Let's do that. Let me quickly share this relative strength grid. Let me select copy here, paste it over here in the chat. I'm going to be pasting all of these down below. Remember, in the description, if you're watching on the archive, you can find this down in the video description. And that is example grid number 3. So economic view, individual indices view. Now we're down to individual sectors. I think you're going to like this next one. Let's see. Wacky Whack says, if I'm looking at a single chart from a 4-cell grid and I zoom in on the first one before landing on the others, will the zoom take and be part of the save? You hope this isn't confusing. No, Wacky Whack, actually, that's a good question. And there is I've demonstrated this in the past. In the interest of time, I'm not going to demonstrate it right now, but you can do that. I'm trying to remember which archive I put that in. But anyway, yes, you can make an adjustment to your chart settings so that your zoom applies across each chart, right? It actually take a little bit of experimenting on my part to remember. Can I remember right off the top of my head how it's done? No, I don't, but it can be done. I know it can. Anyway, so there's the link for this grid. Let's build another one. Let's go up here, start fresh again. Let's go to the S&P 500. I like to start from the same starting point each time, so I'm not missing any steps on an individual build. Let's clean off our relative strength. Right now, it's just comparing the S&P to the S&P. Guess what? They're both in a dead heat tie. That's where our line is going straight sideways. Let me just take that off. Apply, click OK. So now, there are certainly traders who've had a look at what's going on with the economy. They've seen what's going on with the indices. They've zeroed into an individual sector. Maybe they selected a specific stock, but they want to see that across a range of time frames all at once. It helps us avoid making the potential trading error of getting too focused on one time frame and not seeing potentially important developments on other time frames. And so what some will do is they'll build a grid of multiple time frames. Then they can look at individual stocks. Maybe they could even look at sectors for those time frames. So let's do that with the S&P 500 first. And how about we set up a grid? Let's just do 4 time frames. And the first one, let's move maybe progressively from shorter term to longer term. So we're going to blow it up here. Let's maximize this gadget. How about we switch this one to a 1 day, 1 minute chart. So we get a nice clean 1 day chart. Let's move on to the next chart. And here's another time saver for you. We could keep typing in the symbols, but I'm going to link these together. So for each of our charts, right up here to the right of the symbol box, I'm going to change each one of these to, how about we put in blue? It's going to switch to GE for just a moment. That's okay. That's because that was the last chart that I had charted using that number 3. But if I change this to a 3, you'll notice that's S&P. If I change this to a 3, it loads up the S&P. If I change this to a 3, it loads up the S&P. But what I can now do is I can change the time frames on these. How about we put a 5 day, 5 minute here? Let's put a 1 year hourly chart, or a 1 year, 1 day chart here. Well, this one's already 1 year, 1 day, so I don't even need to make that change. This one, let's go for maybe a 10-year view. So we're looking at very short term to very long term. And now, since I've linked these charts, I can actually just type a symbol in any one of these charts. How about we pick on General Electric again? And if I make that change, now all of them switch to that symbol, but they retain the chart time frame. This is a 1 minute chart. That's a 5 minute chart. This is a daily chart, and that's a weekly chart. I think you can see how this could be very helpful for a trader or an investor trying to get a quick gauge of each one. Now, for each one of these as well, if we switch this to a maximize sell, what we may want to do, how about we just want a nice clean candle chart, nothing else on the chart here. Let's load that up in our others. Let's switch our style to, let's go to a clean candle. The next one, style, we're going to go for a clean candle. And then finally that 5 year, we're going to make this a clean candle as well. It's the only time we have to do each of these little steps. Then we just need to save that grid. Let's save this grid as our time frames grid. Click save. It's going to say, Cameron, are you sure? You already have one. Nope, I don't need to do that, but that's how that would be saved. And now I'm prepared to share that with my audience. So let me just copy that and paste. Now, Gina says, how do you get those arrows at the top? Oh, this up here, Gina? That automatically shows up if you are in a grid, but you've maximized one of the cells. So let me just click this left arrow again. And I demonstrated this earlier in the presentation. If you need to, you can go back after this webcast is concluded and we've gotten it posted to our channel. You can go to the channel and go to the archive and just watch the first portion that you may have missed. But in any case, when we're looking at all 4 charts, you'll notice those arrows are not there. But if I maximize one of those charts, now we have the arrows so that we can find the other 3 or the other 6 or however many else we have. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's our time frame. And let me make sure. Yep, it looks like that chat post worked. There's the time frames grid. That grid, as with others, is not guaranteed as to timing or accuracy. And we have one final grid. And this one I'm going to leave up to the viewer. This one I want you to be very personalize this one. But let's just load up one of our watch lists. Because one thing I want to note, and I did do it here, but I want to emphasize, is that our time frames grid, we can just switch among different symbols, including back and forth between indices or stocks. We just type in the symbol and we see each of those time frames. So yeah, we could have looked at the S&P. We might look at the NASDAQ composite and we get a view of minute by minute, day by day, week by week. JV Texan says, is there a way to have just one set of the My Tools? Yes, but that's a little bit off topic. My apologies. I won't go into that. But let's build one more example grid. So let's just switch this top one just for the heck of it. Let's go back to the S&P 500. Let's maximize, let's just set our grid to just 1. There we go. And we'll go back to a 1-year chart. Nice, clean 1-year chart, same starting point. Let's build a grid consisting of one of our personal watch lists. And I think as the example today, I actually have a personal watch list that is the Mag 7. So over here in my personal watch list, you can see we can go to the Magnificent 7. There are those 7 stocks. Maybe I want to see all of those on the same grid at the same time. We know this process now. We've actually already used it. What we can do up here is if there are 7 stocks, we need at least 7 charts in our grid. So let's go up here and choose. How about we choose 8? How about 4 across, 2 down? And then we can just load those symbols to cells. And we're going to go to our personal watch list and load up the Magnificent 7. It's really just about as easy as that. And then finally, we can start. Now you'll notice the first one up here. I'm going to click on the little menu icon. Let's maximize that cell. There's Google. We don't need to worry about this. These are all notes from a previous webcast. I can just come down here to my drawing set and go to default. Nice, clean chart. But if we need to, we can import our previously saved study sets. We can import our previously saved chart styles here. Are we okay with the, I think let's clean this one up a little bit. We might go from this first chart to the next one and load up, let's say, let's load up a clean candle style again. Let's go to load style, clean candle, and we would just repeat that process through the rest of the charts, and we'd wind up with some nice clean charts where we could monitor the Mag 7 very quickly. And so here's what I'll do. I'll share my Mag 7 grid. Let me copy that. I'll pop that in here. There we go. Guys, here's what we've done today. We acquainted ourselves with this grid tool. It's nice sometimes to see what a tool is capable of, but I think it can really help connect a concept with maybe a trader's reality with some really clear examples of how it might be used. So I've gone through some examples of how a trader might build a grid to keep an eye on economic variables, how they might build a grid to keep an eye on different indices, watching the interplay of emerging strength among the different sectors. Then we got to time frames, and finally tracking watch lists. Wacky whack, you like that one? Very good. I knew that this was going to be a lot. This might be one that you need to go back and revisit. If there was a step that you missed or a grid that you didn't quite capture, go back and watch the archive for these webcasts, which is a great reminder that if you're new to this channel, make sure that you have subscribed to the channel. You can actually pop right down below the video stream right now, click on the subscribe button. It only takes a second. It doesn't cost anything to do that. But our Trader Talks channel on YouTube is where you can find the live streams like the one that we're having right now, or if you miss them, you can catch the archives right here on the playlists. So if I go to playlists, I can scroll all the way down. We have lots of different webcast series. This one happens to be housed at the very bottom. Getting started with Thinkorswim, I can click on View Full Playlist, and I can go through, for example, last week's discussion of 5 stock chart tools for gaining a longer-term market perspective. So if you like the 5 tools that we went through today, maybe you like the 5 tools I went through last week. So go check that out. Now, Barbara and I would also like to encourage everybody watching, whether you're watching live or you're watching on the archive, to follow your favorite Schwab presenters on social media. Barb and I are both very active on X, and you can find and follow us there. You can find Barb there at Barb Armstrong CS. You can find me on X at Cameron May CS. So let me take you over to X. This is what I look like on X. You notice what's happened with the beard since that picture was taken. This scene probably looks pretty much the same as the day that I saw it in Scotland. But in any case, there's my profile. You can see that I'm very active here. And if you reply to one of my posts on X, I try to reply right back to you. It's really the place to connect with your favorite presenters when the camera is not on. Now, you can also, as of just a few months ago, you can follow me on LinkedIn. Just go to linkedin.com/in and then throw on /Cameron May CS. That'll take you right to my profile. Give me a follow, and I keep an eye on the posts that are, or the replies that are made on my posts there, and I just try to reply back to you as well. You really enjoyed this one? That's good to see. Barbara, you are very welcome. Everybody else, Randy, glad you found good value in this. I'm going to let you go. We have a couple more webcasts coming up today. We have more webcasts throughout the trading week. I have something new every single day of the week, as long as the markets are open and as long as I'm not on vacation. I have a range of webcast series on different topics, so keep an eye on the calendar. I will look for you in those webcast series, but I do want to say thank you to everybody that's already clicked the thumbs up. I can see still about 100 people watching the live stream right now. If you've watched one of our webcasts and if you found value in it, you enjoyed it, make sure you click that thumbs up. That's like applauding your presenter, but it also gives my video a nice little boost in the YouTube algorithm, helps more people find these discussions, like how to set up grids on Thinkorswim. All right. Next up is trading index options with Ben Watson. So go enjoy that. Thanks for the reminder there, Barb. Barb, thank you for just helping out in the chats. That's definitely appreciated. I do not see a survey, but always we appreciate your comments. If you see a survey, fill it out. Very much it helps. But I'll look for you in a future webcast. I'll also look for you on social media, on X and on LinkedIn. But whenever I see you again, until that moment arrives, I want to wish the very best of luck. Happy trading. Bye-bye.